invisible curse of sin. The terrible, invisible curse of sin. Many people have it seems like sin is a very simple concept, but it actually is not. The very idea of sin has a certain complexity. The reality of sin has a very terrible complexity. And that is also one of the reasons why it's not easy to fight. It's not easy to overcome. And one of the problems of sin is it is not simply doing wrong things. You understand? There's a rule. Don't steal. You go in there. I mean, when I was a little kid, this is after church. On Sunday, there was a little store down the street, and I didn't have any money, and I wanted candy. I was like 6 years old. And I was going to the store, and I think it was a Chinese lady. The reason I know it was a Chinese lady is because she caught me about the fourth time. So I got her 3 times. In other words, but the fourth time she caught me. But that's the rule. Do not steal. If you steal, that's sin. And that's easy to understand. There's a lot more than that, though. There's more than that. And most people don't see it. That's why I say it's invisible. There is a terrible, but to most of our eyes, invisible curse of sin. And it's right at the beginning of the Bible. It's right in Genesis chapter 3. Now we're going to look at, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach something today for you younger folks. If you are, say, age 13, 12, 13, I think you can understand this message. If you don't quite understand it, it's okay. But it's very important. And most adults, you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. And it is a problem. What I'm going to talk about today is a problem for everybody. There is no culture. There is no place where this is not touched. It doesn't matter whether you're white or Native American or Korean or South Asian. Okay? And it doesn't matter whether you're 21st century or 5th century or 19th century. This sin curse problem corrupts and destroys everywhere. But I have noticed that it is especially a horrific problem here. Having come to the reservation much, I've noticed that this particular thing that I'm going to talk about today really has like a satanic grip on this place and on this culture. And it is in San Jose too, and it's not quite as, it's very invisible there too. But the effects of what I'm going to talk about today is particularly terrible here. And that's why I want to talk about it, because I hope that it becomes less invisible. You can't solve a problem if you don't even know it's there. You can't solve a problem if it's not properly diagnosed. If you're sick and you go to the doctor and you're saying, I'm hurting, and he goes, is that all you got? I can't really help you. And then he goes, let's try that. And he just starts guessing. Can't really help you. So, but the Bible tells you. It tells us this is what is the problem. And then when we could see it, and stops becoming so invisible, and now we have a chance. We at least have a chance to fight it and beat it and live more gloriously as God intended. So I'm going to go through 3 passages. They're not long, but they're interlinked. And it'll help you to see, if you can understand these passages, it'll like change the way you look at people. It'll change the way you look at men. It'll change the way you look at women. It'll change the way you look at marriage. It'll change the way you look at children in families. In America right now, everywhere, rich, poor, we are destroying the family, we're destroying marriage, we're destroying manhood, we're destroying womanhood, and it's partly because the sin curse problem is incredibly invisible. As America has decided that we're smarter than God, we do not need the Bible. It's interesting. So we learn it, but in our society, we have to learn it through like psychologists and sociologists, and then they very stumble and they fall on their face and they're starting to learn it. Of course, they don't know that this is sin. They just know that it's a really, really bad problem. But God's wiser. It's right here. It's right here. So let's get into this. First, the good part. Okay, the good part. Genesis chapter 2. This is page 4. So let's just go to verse 20. Let's go to verse 21. Are you there? You see it? Verse 21 on page 4, chapter 2. So the Lord God, you see the capital L-O-R-D, that's his name. There's Lord, L-O-R-D, and then in a good translation, you'll get the capital L-O-R-D. That's his name. So let me just say his name, because that's actually the way it should be. In English, we try to say the Lord. It's not very helpful. I don't go around calling people like the human, the girl, okay? The pastor. We have names. God has a name. He gave us his name. It's personal. We get to know him by his personal relationship. So Yahweh, that's his name. God is his title. So Yahweh God made for him, that's Adam. There's no sin yet, okay? Made for him, Adam. So Yahweh God made him fall into a deep sleep, and he took out one of the man's ribs. Then after closing the man's side, Yahweh made a woman out of the rib. Yahweh God brought her to the man, and the man exclaimed, first poem in the Bible. At least the first poem from man. Here's someone like me. It's not very poetic in this translation, okay? But we'll just do the best. Here's someone like me. She's part of my body, my own flesh and bones. Because before that, there's an issue. He's alone. So I know we all say that a man's best friend is a dog. That is not according to the Bible. Not according to the Bible. Maybe we think the man's best friend is a dog because we gave up on the wife. The wife was too hard. Okay, and then the wife was like, you're hard, you stink, whatever. So then we're like, so then she gets a cat and he gets a dog. Or he gets a cat or she gets a dog. It's easier. But it's a problem. And according to the Bible, the dog wasn't good enough. The deep, deep aloneness, no sin. If you feel alone, lonely, that is not sin. That is not sin. Understand that. You should never feel ashamed if you're lonely. You're just normal. Because you're lonely because God says you can't live this life just on you and like your best friend, the dog. You have to have someone made from the bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh. And they can't quite be like you. So here we go. She came from me, a man, so I will name her woman. Okay? So he's really excited. By the way, you can't get it, but he's super excited. I mean, she's naked and beautiful. Of course he's excited, okay? He's excited. Verse 24. That's why a man will leave his father and mother. This is a very important verse. This is the definition of marriage. Therefore, that's why a man will leave his own father and mother. He marries a woman, or it says he holds fast. That's the actual literal translation. He glues himself. And two of them will become one flesh. They say like one person. It's not a bad translation. It's pretty good. If you're married, you have this phrase, like, can we meet your better half? That's what you say to the guys. Most of the time, the wife is the better half. Okay, almost always, okay? If the guy's the better half, it's not so good, okay? But why? Because it's like now you're more complete. There's two persons, but together you feel more like one person. In a good marriage, that's how it's supposed to be. And so in a bad marriage, it's like the left arm and the right arm is at war. And in every marriage, even in a good marriage, that happens. But here's the rest of the passage. Verse 25. Although the man and his wife were both naked, they were not ashamed. That's what it's supposed to be. So first, Adam's super excited. He feels alone. God gives him someone who will fill that empty place. He's not sinning, but in his heart, there's an empty place. Only somebody else can fill that. It's not another guy. I'm sorry in America that everybody says that you can do that, but that's not true, okay? God says it has to be woman. And it's not your mom and dad. It's interesting. You have to leave your mom and dad. Today, millennials, that's what we call the younger generation. Like in the cities, you have like 30-year-old people living with their mom and dads. That's bad, okay? It's like, kick them out. Get out of here. Go find a woman. And I hear that in the millennials, they have a term for it. They call it adulting. I was like, yeah, it's adulting, okay? But it's actually God's will. So you're naked. Naked doesn't just mean, no clothes here. It means your soul is utterly open. In a good marriage, your soul, your heart, is naked and open to your spouse. And you're not ashamed. There's no hiding. And there's incredible love that way. This is God's will. This is God's will. It's not easy to get there, is it? Okay, let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Go to verse 16. So I just got a short circuit. So verse 16. See that on the page 5? So quick background. You probably all know the story. The serpent, the devil, said a wicked lie to Eve. She was deceived. And then she got her husband, and they both did the exact thing you're not supposed to do. One fruit, don't touch it. They did. Now, the curse of sin is coming on them. So if we choose, here's life. So, who knows what fruit it was? Somebody says it's an apple. That's just so American. It probably wasn't an apple. This is probably somewhere in the Middle East. It probably was like a fig tree or something like that, right? It was an apple. It wasn't an apple. It was something else, okay? It doesn't really matter the point of what fruit it was. The point of the fruit is God saying, I love you. I have all wisdom. And if you're going to live life, you must first know me and trust me. Your heart must be open. And you trust when I say this is good, this is bad. You trust me as your Lord, as your Father. Will you do that? Now, if everything was perfect and they can never screw it up, there's no choice to trust God, and that means there's no love. If you cannot choose to trust God, there is no love, and trust and choice is part of love. You get it? So that's why some people go like, why did God have to stick that thing in there? Because otherwise, then we'd be a robot. If we can have you, you're like a program you will never, it's like, you guys, the young guys, you guys probably haven't seen this. There's a movie that came out a few years ago called Stepford Wives. You guys ever heard of this movie? This couple goes to this town, and all the wives are they're like super, they're all pretty and they dress perfectly and they always do exactly what their husband wants. Exactly. And then after a while it gets really creepy and they find out like all the wives, they've been brainwashed and they're like programmed to always go, yes, dear, I'll do whatever you want. That is not love. They won't have any marital fights. There won't be any divorce. But is that good? So God put a possibility where we can say, that's why it didn't matter what the fruit was. The point was, don't touch it. Just the one thing. So it's like a point. Will you trust me or not trust me? Will you live for me? Or will you just decide it's all on me? I'm the boss. So they broke it. And then there was consequences. This gets me to the point that I want to make. Here in this passage is an explanation of why the world is so rotten and horrible. And it's not just like we're bad people. No, that's not a very good explanation. It's very specific. And it's very specific. Men are cursed and have a power of sin over them. Women are cursed and have a power, and they're not the same. They are not the same. So, I'm going to read this. So let me say what I was at the beginning, and then just keep this in mind while I read this. Sin is not just breaking the rule. Don't steal and you don't steal. Sin is a power and a curse that's like controls us and enslaves us from the inside out. Sin is a power and a curse that enslaves us and controls us in our mind and our heart from the inside out. So here's how it goes. Here's the way God just said it. So first to the woman. You know, he curses the snake. Verse 16, to the woman. Then Yahweh said to the woman, you will suffer terribly when you give birth. But you will still desire your husband, and he will rule over you. Doesn't seem like much. You will suffer terribly when you give birth, but you will still desire your husband, and he will rule over you. Okay, let me read. That's what the woman got. Every woman has this. You all have this. You want to know why certain teenage girls, they're like, I am so strong and I'm confident. And then they have puberty. And then certain parts of their body start to change. And then next thing you know, the girl that was sassy and confident when she was 8 years old is now very embarrassed and nervous around the boys when she's 13 years old. Why? Because something inside of you, you just long for your husband. But the way you long for him, it rules over you. It controls you. It controls you, and not in a good way. So let's just stop there for a moment. So let's move on. Verse 17. Then Yahweh said to the man, you listened to your wife and ate fruit from that tree. So let's just stop for a moment. Why is that bad? Because he's the head. And she's supposed to submit to him, and I know that's not a very popular idea today, right? But he's supposed to listen to God. So the proper way is God is the head, and then he's the head in the marriage. It doesn't mean he controls her. But he's supposed to lead according to the Lord. So then she listened to not even a human being. She listened to the devil, the snake, so that you understand how the word is going bottom up, not the right, beautiful, and glorious wrong way. So this is all backwards, what he's saying. So in other words, you failed as a leader. You are a bad head. That's what Yahweh is saying to him. What kind of a head are you? You're supposed to know it from me. But she said something wrong, and then you followed her. What's going on? And so the ground will be under a curse because of what you did. As long as you live, you will have to struggle to grow enough food. Your food will be plants, but the ground will produce thorns and thistles. You will have to sweat to earn a living. You are made out of soil, and you will once again turn into soil. Okay, let's stop. Is that all? Is all there is? Okay. Here's why this is important. God made a beautiful paradise. But it's interesting. He didn't just make it perfect, and now everything is perfect, and we're just going to go in there go to Hawaii, and you don't have to do anything. It's not how he made it. He says, you will be like the ruler of this creation under me. And so get in there and work it. And beautiful things will come out of creation, beautiful in the way that I want it to be, because I made you to be beautiful and glorious. All men need to do this. First, he made the man. All men need to work not to make money. It's not about money. It's not about money. It's the creation was made for you to bless it, and then put the garden and make it beautiful, and then it'll bless you. The food will come out of it, and it'll fill you, and it'll make you feel like a man. But now he said that's what they were going to do. That's his role. But now that part's broken. It's all broken. Now, so let me give you an example. So whenever the men can't find real work that makes them feel like a real man, bad things happen. Really bad things happen. Some of them become criminals because you can't find real work, so we steal. Some of them become angry. Some of them become depressed, and then they drink or do worse things like crystal meth. You see how relevant it is? The men are supposed to do this thing, but now the thing that makes the guy feel like he's a man is the broken. And as soon as it feels broken, then a lot of destruction and violence and just dark chaos starts coming out. So what was the woman for? So the man was put to there for, but he's alone. That was the problem. God says, I'll give you somebody that will fill that empty place. So the woman her best gift is not to go get into the world and then put order around the world. Her best gift is that she will be the relationship. She herself is love. That's why the mom is like, a home is not a house. The home is like mom. Mom is the home. Because the man shows up from work and he feels lonely, and when he shows up, wife is there and she fills the heart with herself. And so the woman, her wonderful, incredible power and gift is I will bless my husband, I will bless she's like the relationship master. So you notice between men and women, the average, we're talking like 90% of women are better than generally like 9% of men when it comes to relationships. But who do you want to fix a car? There are some women that can fix cars better than a man, but that's probably not who you're going to get. Who do you want to till the field? Who do you want to make the iPhone? You're going to get the man. But who do you want to nurture the children or make a home feel like a home? You ever go to a college student, so they're like 5 guys living in a college house? There's like 5 guys living in an apartment going to college, go to their house, and you're like, this place is gross. It stinks. Who cleans? There's like no food in the refrigerator, and some of the food is rotten, and there's like maybe beer, but nothing that like actually makes you feel good. And then like one of the guys gets a girlfriend. She shows up. One woman, she shows up and she just starts, she cleans, she's like, this bathroom is disgusting. She just can't stand it. She makes it cleaner. She puts a plant in the middle of the living room. These dudes are such idiots. They would never put a plant in the middle why? Because it's just pretty and beautiful. And the house stops becoming like some ugly dump. And just there's like, you like before the woman and after the woman, you're like, so if you walk into college and none of the guys has a girlfriend, you know. One guy has a girlfriend, and you go, oh, I know. Somebody got a girlfriend. So men without women, it's a really bad thing. Women without men, it's a really bad thing. Okay, one more passage. Go to page 105. 105. Verse 34. Quick background. Moses gets to meet God face to face, although he doesn't actually quite get to see his face, otherwise he'll die. He gets to see God's back. That's kind of what he did. God sticks Moses in a crevice. And he goes, you won't get to see. He goes, can I see your glory? Pretty incredible request. God says, you can't see my face or you'll die. But I'll put you in a crevice and I'll cover you with my hand and then I'll walk by and you'll see my back. And then Moses sees God's back and then he goes crazy. He goes completely like, He goes crazy. So verse 5, Yahweh God came down in a cloud and stood beside Moses there on the mountain. God spoke his holy name. Yahweh, it's my name. Then he passed by in front of Moses and called out, I am Yahweh God. I am merciful and very patient with my people. I show great love and I can be trusted. I keep my promises to my people forever and ever. But I will also punish anyone who sins. When people sin, I punish them and their children, and also their grandchildren, and also their great-grandchildren. So this last phase. Now, we learned a lot so far, right? This is like a big Bible study, and some of you are kind of sleeping because Bible study is kind of not interesting, apparently. I hope you'll just... First, we find out the way the picture of the man-woman marriage is supposed to look like. It's a gloriously beautiful picture. Then we find out what's wrong inside of it. So they sinned against God, and each of them are cursed now. The thing that each of them that was supposed to do, their special contribution is now there's a poison pill in it. The man's work to bless the creation and then provide blessing into the world like God, that's broken. Now he's like, I'm so great, and I use it for power. It's all about money. It's all about me. Or it's just hard. It's just super hard. It doesn't work. And then the woman is like, I love my husband, but then he's a jerk. And he oppresses me, or he's violent. I love my children, but it's painful. And it's not just talking about the birth. Actually, the most pain that moms get from their children is not from the birth. The biggest pain is later. It's a lot of pain. So this thing where the mom and the child and everything's supposed to be so glorious and beautiful, it's broken. It's so broken. And it's even worse. It's generation to generation to generation. One generation's marriage is completely mangled. And you're like, okay, they made mistakes. The next one will be okay. No. You know who pays? The kids pay. And they don't only pay. Then their kids pay. Because they grew up in a family where mom and dad fight, hate each other, maybe broke up, abused each other, something. Then the kids pay for it because then when they grow up, they don't know how to do it. And then since they don't know how to do it, but they're lonely, still got to have a man, still got to have a woman. Then they have kids, and then they pay. You see the passage? It's very real. Doesn't that seem very, very relevant to this place? It's super relevant. Okay, so let's go to part 2. Part 2, I'm going to tell you a story. The hurt and wounds of the curse. I'll tell you a story about somebody I met. He's a brother I know. He's a strong Christian, Korean-American guy, and he's a leader in the church. I won't give you his name, it's a little too personal, but he told me this deeply personal story about his family. And so the family, here's the story goes something like this. So I'm not making this is all very real, okay? So his father was very smart. Came from Korea to America so he can go to some really good university. Studied very hard. At college, he met a beautiful woman. They fell in love. She was white, actually. He's Korean. She's white. They fell in love, got married. He went on, and he was very successful. Made really good money. Then they had a child, a son. Very happy. I mean, he's beautiful. He's half white, half Korean. A lot of those people are good looking. Okay? It's like when you mix the ethnicities, the people come out better looking. I don't know, something like that. I guess God likes it. It's make it happen, all right? So that's maybe why a lot of Native Americans are very pretty. Because a lot of you, intermarried and stuff, it's really, you really are quite good looking. Many of you, okay? But then she got sick. His wife got sick. And she died very young. The boy was very young. And she got sick. And this Korean man, brilliant Korean man, very successful, he mourned. It broke his heart. It broke his heart. But he looked at he's like saying, what can I do? Well, guess what? He's still alone. He's a man. He makes good money, but where's that money going to be for? He does good things. I mean, his job creates blessing into the culture, but he's alone. His heart is like empty. It is not good for the man to be alone, God's words. He feels that all the time. And so, maybe I'll meet another pretty gal. But it's like, I can't marry any white women. Because she'll always remind me of my wife. And that hurts too much. Actually, it's even worse. If I look at my son, I see my wife. It hurts too much. So you know what he did? He sent his beautiful half-Korean, half-white American son to her parents. And her parents raised his son. Kind of like a familiar story around here, right? It wasn't because of addiction or anything, but because of hurt and tragedy. So he sent his son. And then he decided, I need a wife. He went back to Korea. Met a nice family. They introduced this to their daughter. He's like, she's pretty enough. She seems pretty smart, very respectable. Will you marry me? They dated for a short time. They got married. And then she moved to America. Then they had 3 children. I think it was like son, daughter, son. No, son, son, daughter. Son, son, daughter. This story comes from the oldest son. But the wife was very, very unhappy. You know why? Because she felt like my husband really loved his first wife. I'm just sort of like the replacement. He doesn't really, really love me. He really, really loved her. She could feel that. Men, you can't fool your wives. You think you can fool your wife? There is no way. She could probably fool you, but you can't fool her, right? Because wives they just got more power like that, okay? The average wife anyway. I mean, there's some guys that are very savvy and wives that are a little more naive, but mostly wives have that power and men don't. You can't fool your wife. She could tell, he doesn't really love me. He loved her. This is hard, isn't it? Just listening to this story, you can feel it. Can you feel it? Don't you feel it for her? Now, the husband still loved his first son and would send him gifts. And his mother and father-in-law, the white grandparents, would send pictures. And the boy loved his father, and he would visit that boy once every now and then, and on his own, not with his new wife and kids, and would bring gifts. And he was a really smart guy, remember? And he met his wife in like a really top university. Guess what? That kid was really smart. And then the grandma and grandpa would send the report cards. The report cards would be like A's all the way down. And the Korean father of his half-white son would look at that and go, oh, my son, of the wife I really loved. Of course, he didn't say that, but his wife knows it. What does the Bible say? Your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. He'll control you. Not in a good way. It's a curse. So Here's what this poor woman, she's actually very pretty, very smart, probably a really cool woman. She said, here's how I'm going to get my husband to love me. He's really proud of his son. I'm going to make all three of my kids perfect. If my kids are as perfect as his first son, maybe even more perfect, then he will love me. That's what she came to. So she looked at the straight A's of the other son. And then she looked at all three of her kids and decided that their parenting, this is how she's going to be a mom, she's going to turn their life into a boot camp. That all, Koreans, they like getting to good schools. It's not like my kid's going to go to the MBA. That'd be the dream around here. My kid goes to the MBA. But here it's like if my kid goes to like Harvard. So she decided my kid's going to go to Harvard. All three of them. So when they're very young, they're all going to get straight A's, perfect SATs, going to go to Harvard because they got to be as good as the other kid and better. Now let me ask you, how would you like to be that kid, her three kids? Would you like to be those three kids? She goes, I love you. You love your mom. And so you just do what your mom says. But she's not actually loving them. She's using them. Right? Guess what? Dad is really smart. Mom was pretty smart too, the Korean mom. The first kid made it to Harvard. The second kid didn't make it to Harvard. The second kid made it into like a really good university. It was like a top 15 school. It was like a top 15 school, but not like a top 1, 2, 3 school. So like mom's was like Harvard or like Yale or like Stanford. Everything else is like whatever. He got into like number 15 school. He got depressed and went to therapy. Even though he was very smart, did very well in school, because of course you do, all his life he did well in school. It's like, wow. It's like, that's, the youngest, she got into like Yale or something like that. But when they grew up, they made good money, they looked like good people, but there's unbelievable depression and anger. And the oldest guy, he didn't understand this. So he told me the story. He just thought, it's my family. But then he got into church leadership. And at this church, they want to make sure that all the leaders, they shepherd the people unto God and their hearts can be healed because they know that people's hearts are really hurting and broken. So the leader of this church, the pastor of this church, made all the leaders go through therapy. Every leader in the church has to go to counseling. The elders and the pastors got to all go to counseling. So he went to counseling, and then the counselor said, "Wow, you are crazy messed up. You need more sessions." The other elders would get like one every other month. She says, "You need to come more often, a lot more often." And about a year into counseling, he figured all this out. His counselor figured the man was deep in clinical psychology and the Bible. And then he started studying the Bible, and he's like, oh my gosh. Does this story make sense? It's not just on the res. So, in his case, mom decided, I got to earn my husband's love, and I'm going to use my kids. And then all three of them ended up just completely broken. The first one, because of Jesus, got healed. The other two were lost. Other people don't go, grades, 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 top college, this is what will fill me. It's kind of weird. It's a weird strategy. If I get that, like that's by the way, that's a lot of Koreans use that strategy, just to let you know. Native folks, probably Indians use that. Indians from South Asia, they probably use that strategy. If I get really good grades, my parents will love me. And then I'll be a whole, complete person. No. You'll be a really broken, sad, angry person. And on the res, it's more like I'm deeply lonely and the person that's supposed to love me is using me. Is it any wonder that they turn to drugs? If there is great pain inside of you, one of the things you need is you need to get away from the pain. But how do you get away from the pain if it's in you? You can't run away from yourself, but that's what people do. They run away from themselves by numbing it. Like the first time you take the drug, it makes you feel really, really good. And then the second time, it doesn't feel as good. And the third time, it doesn't feel as good. And the 10th and 20th time, it doesn't feel good at all, but you're just longing for the first time it feels good. I use ice cream. That's how I do it. When I'm feeling really, really low, right? When I'm feeling really, really low, I'm not going to go get crystal meth, but Haagen-Dazs is like kind of my choice. Haagen-Dazs, it's like, so I'm sitting there like shoving Haagen-Dazs into my face, watching football. Football will be cool. If it's a bad game, like this game is bad. Shoving Haagen-Dazs in my face because I'm low. But what if the pain, but my pain is not like this. I have a really good wife. And Jesus is in my heart. So, when I'm shoving Haagen-Dazs in my face, it's because I'm forgetting I have a wonderful wife and I have Jesus. So like I'm trying to use something. What if people start using their children? And their children know it. And then they grow up and they're like, I like you. Somebody's got to love me. Do you think it's possible to stop teenage pregnancy on this reservation? Let me tell you something. There is no way condoms are going to stop teenage pregnancy on this reservation. There is no way. There is no way. The guy is like, this is how men are wired. I'm going to go out and do something good in the world. I'm alone. Some girl, some woman that is worthy, she'll say, oh, you're a really wonderful man. I want to be your woman. But what if he can't find a good job? How's he going to find that woman? Then he breaks down. She's now lonely too. But I got to find a man. I want babies. I want a man to love me. But there aren't enough good men to love me. So if I can't find a good man to love me, I'll just find a man to love me. There will be teenage pregnancy. Unless there's something better. Unless this curse, this emptiness, this pain can be answered and filled. Unless this huge, horrible curse that's it's in you can be filled, then only then can we throw away the drugs or the alcohol or the meaningless sex. The sex, or like if we have the sex, then for like a short time it feels good. You don't feel so lonely, but then he leaves you. And you feel even worse. And your children got no daddy. And they're like, or maybe they stay together for a while. But he's not a good man. Or you don't know how to be a good wife. And then it's the most terrible thing when the person you're married to, I'm sorry to say this because I know many, many people feel this. I'm telling you, when I have a fight with my wife, here's the worst. I can fight my kids. I can fight like my co-pastor. It's like we rarely almost ever fight. But all that's bad, but nothing compared to the days I fight my wife. When we fight, it's like everything else goes out the window. My work, money, TV, who cares? Right now, my wife is really ticked at me, and she might kind of hate me, and I kind of hate her. It's really, really painful. And what if it gets so painful, it breaks? The pain of that thing it just completely spills out. It's not like, okay, we got divorced, or she moved away, and like, okay, I'll numb it for a while, and I'll be okay. It's not okay. And then the kids aren't okay. Then the grandkids aren't okay. I'm sorry to talk about this horrible thing, but it's needed. Okay. Good news. Let's talk about, I just talked about everything that's just completely horrible. Let's talk about something good. There is an answer. There is a Savior. There is someone who could feel the pain. There's someone that has wisdom for these problems. There's someone that can make us like men the way we're supposed to be men, and women the way we're supposed to be women, and husbands and wives, and fathers and mothers, and then the children can flourish. And then they can have grandchildren that flourish, and great-grandchildren that flourish, and then the culture, it just balloons. Beautiful marriages and beautiful families and beautiful children, and then new leaders, and then there's wealth, and then there's generosity, and there's grace, and then there's mercy. There's healing. You know why I say that to you? Because it's true. I sometimes feel like so many people on the reservation, there's so much pain and destruction, you think this is just the way it's always going to be. It's one of the problems when like the marriage breaks apart and the kids just hurts. It's just the way it's always going to be. But there's a God that says it doesn't have to be that way. And if you know me, by grace, I'll give you something new. The God's name is Jesus. Let me give you some ways that He helps. And then we'll close the message. All right? First, we have a lot of guilt because we weren't good husbands or wives or boyfriends or girlfriends, and we made a lot of mistakes. We have a lot of guilt. The guilt goes on the Lamb of God, and He washes it away. We have a lot of shame. He says, I honor you. And the shame wipes away. He wipes it away by grace. As a high priest, we're in a lot of pain. Remember, guys, what I told you? The high priest is like the very, very best friend. He comes in and he mourns with us. He understands with us. He hurts with us and for us and takes us back to God. He's the bridegroom of the church. He's the husband of the bride, the church. The church is a terrible bride. So He already knows dysfunctional marriage. I know every dysfunctional marriage because my marriage is terrible. My wife is always running away. She's always cheating on me. But I will be there for you. I understand. There will be forgiveness. There will be healing. And the Bible says she will come back. And there'll be a new kind of love. We're so blind and it's invisible and so foolish. You know what He is? He gives wisdom. And I'm trying to proclaim some of that wisdom. There's wisdom. There's words in here. How to be the husband. How to be the wife. How to be the father. How to be the mother. There's wisdom. How to handle things like sexuality. There's wisdom. It's not just a bunch of rules. It's blessing. And here's some of the best ones. You know who He is? God sent the Son. It's very important. The Son will redeem all of us because then the children will become like orphans. Orphans are all at pain and empty and running around. My mom and dad didn't quite be there for me. Maybe they just can't love me. That's the orphan's heart. Some of you know this. You have a heart of an orphan. Let me tell you, from Jesus. The Father sent the Son so He could put the Son's heart in you. And you will completely know the Father loves you. Maybe your father on earth failed you, but Jesus the Son will put a new son's heart in you as a son and a daughter, and the Father, the most perfect Father, will fill your heart through Jesus. And one more, as the Redeemer, redeeming is to like buy back that which is lost. Husbanding has been lost. Wifing has been lost. Parenting has been lost. Children have been lost. Manhood has been lost. Womanhood has been lost. The one who redeems will pay to get it back. And what he does is he wins back the deepest relationships we have by first fulfilling the deepest relationship we need, back to God. And when the Lord starts to fill our hearts, then instead of just going out in the world and like grasping after whatever, good grades, numb the pain, instead we'll say, I'm hurting. And God says, I will give you marriage again, and new children again, and myself again. Because I bought it back. I redeemed it. This is the gospel. I hope that many of you will hear this and think, this is my dream for you whom I love. This is my dream for like some of the marriages and the broken marriages in my own church. But especially this is my dream for the reservation. So many hurting orphans. A lot of you guys are orphans or feel like orphans. And I want to give you the Father through Jesus, to give you a son's heart. And the Father will pour out His love on you and heal this reservation, heal this land, heal your hearts, heal the families, heal the marriages. And you could be glorious, beautiful Paiutes as God intended. It's God's gift and His promise for you. Please run to Him and receive it. Let's pray.